This is Mr. Precella, and we're reviewing for our final exam in college algebra today. So the first problem, it says find the determinant of this 3 by 3 matrix, and it says to use expansion by minors about the first column. You're thinking, what the heck do they mean by that? Well, what we're going to do is the crisscross method. So using the crisscross method. To do that, you recopy the first 2 columns. And you're going to do the little crisscross, multiplying. Make sure when you're getting started that you're using the first number. Make sure that this is the first diagonal you're using, not this. You should be using the first number when you're getting started. So I'm going to multiply these 3 diagonals. Oh wow, it's becoming a mess. And let's see. Multiply the first diagonal. 0 times anything is 0. So 0. Now the second diagonal. 1 times 8 times 8. 64. It's a positive 64. 7 times 1 times negative 2. Is that a negative 14? And there's always a minus in the middle. And we'll do the other 3 diagonals. So let's see. 7 times 7 is 49 times 8. Let's see. Do I have a calculator? What's 49 times 8?
392.
392. Thank you. 0 times 8 times negative 2. Again, 0. Anything times 0. 1 times 1 times 8 is 8. So, let's see. 64 minus 14 is 50. Then minus, always minus in between those parentheses. 392 plus 8, is that a 400? So 50 minus 400 is a negative 350. Okay. When I have a chance, I'll just go type these answers in. Verify that they're right. This is using finding determinant using crisscross. If you looked at view an example and saw how to do it with the expansion by minors, that's the method I think they were probably using on view an example. That's fine. You can use any method you want. The method I think is easiest for this is crisscross. Okay. Now let's see. What about this one? This says solve the system of equations using Cramer's rule. Well, we've worked with elimination and substitution. I suppose you could say, well, what's to make me do Cramer's rule? Couldn't I use elimination or substitution? Yeah, you could, but I think it's going to be pretty messy if you try to use elimination or substitution. But that's up to you. I'm going to use Cramer's rule, which said what? Well, x is d subscript x divided by d, and y is d subscript y divided by d. Well, that's fairly meaningless unless you know what the heck all those d's stand for. Well, what's d? Let's find d first. Capital D is the determinant of the coefficient matrix. The coefficients are the numbers in front of the variables. So just write down those 4 numbers, 9, 7, 8, 2, and do the crisscross. This crisscross is going to be the short crisscross where you just make an X. Okay? Make sure you're starting with the first number. If you do the 7 and 8 first, you're going to mess up every time. 9 times 2, 18. Then a minus. 7 times 8, is that 56? So what do we have there? 18 minus 56 is a negative, I'm thinking 38. So we know the number that goes on the bottom of these fractions here. Now let's find dx. What the heck is dx? Well, whatever the subscript is, that's the column that gets replaced with the constants. Okay? So we're going to replace the x column with the 10 and 2. The y column stays 7 and 2. Do the little crisscross again. So let's see. Be sure you start with the first number. We'd have a 20, then a minus, 14. So 20 minus 14, is that going to be a 6? So whatever the subscript is, that's the column that gets replaced with the constants. Do the same thing for dy. So dy, or d subscript y. Maybe I better lift it up a little. I'm replacing the y column with the 10 and 2. The x column stays 9 and 8. The y column is the one that's replaced with the 10 and the 2. So let's see. Ooh, my 10 should have been lower. I'll read that. What's that going to be? An 18 minus 80. 18 minus 80, is that a negative? What's that going to be? A negative 62? Ooh, I think we're going to wind up with some fractions on this one, aren't we? So x is dx divided by d. So dx is 6 over a negative 38. Now that's going to be a negative, I guess the 6 over 38, could I divide both of those by 2 to get a 3 and 19? When you type in the solution, be sure to put it in parentheses. Parentheses, negative 3 over 19. There's x. Y is dy over d. So it's a negative 62 over negative 38. Negative over negative positive. I guess I could divide it by 2 again. 31 and 19 if I divide above and below by 2. So 31 over 19. Gotta put it in parentheses. Now, just to make sure you get the hang of it, I have the same, another one of them. Problem 3 is another Cramer's rule problem. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So x is dx over d, y is dy over d, and okay. Well, let's see. Start off by finding just the determinant of the coefficient matrix. So you just write down the 4 coefficients. The coefficients are the numbers in front of the variables. So -3, 5, 5, 6. And do the little crisscross. We'd have -18 and a minus 25. So what's that going to be? -18 minus 25. Is that a -43? Y'all caught up with me? Are there any questions? This problem's similar to the one we just did, isn't it? So to find dx. Now, the way the order in which you find these dx's and d's and dy's doesn't matter. One time a student asked me, why don't I find dx first? No reason. Replace the x column with the 5 and 49. Use a 5 and a 6 for the y column. And do the little crisscross. We'd have 30. Then a minus 49 times 5. Is that going to be a 245? 245, yeah. So we have 30 minus 245. That's going to be a negative 215. Is that negative 215? Now, what about a dy? Whatever the subscript is, that's the one that gets replaced. So the y column is 5 and 49. The x column is still -3 and 5. So do the little cross multiply. -3 times 49. That's a negative 147. Then a minus 5 times 525. So what are we going to get there? Negative 147 minus 25. Is that a negative 172? Now, ready to figure out. X is dx over d. So negative 215 over negative 43. Negative over negative is positive. 215 divided by 43, I think that goes in evenly, doesn't it? Is it 5? So maybe we ain't going to have fractions on this one. Y is dy over d. So dy is negative 172. D is negative 43. So negative divided by negative is positive. Is that going to be a 4? Let's see. I'm thinking it is a 4. So our answer here is 5, 4. Now, I didn't do it over here on this one because it's such messy fractions, but you can sort of check it by plugging it in. Put the 5 and 4 in and see, do you get a 5 here and a 49 there? If I put a 5 here and a 4 there, negative 15 plus 20 is 5. 25 plus 24 is a 49. So this one you can check it easily. If you wanted to check it, if you're actually taking a test or something, then you could always punch it into your calculator. Okay. So that's just another Kramer's rule. And the next problem, we go back to the beginning of the semester. We began the semester discussing square roots and imaginary numbers, the square root of a negative, and that's what we're about to do with the next problem, starting back there. Okay, any questions? Problem number 4. It says, perform the indicated operations and write the result in standard form. Well, in order to simplify this fraction, the first thing we're going to have to do is simplify this square root. So when I look at that square root, I ask myself, is there going to be an imaginary number here? And the answer is yes, because we have the square root of a negative. Because of this pink negative here under the square root, I'm going to write this pink I right there. All I'm doing right now is just simplifying that square root. Next, I need to think, okay, 50 is not a perfect square, but what perfect square does divide into 50? What are those the perfect squares, the numbers whose square roots we know just from the multiplication tables? Well, 2 times 2, 4, 9, 16, 25. 25 divides evenly into 50. So if we think of this as 25 times 2, then this square root I could reduce to a green 5 and then we put the I before the square root. That's the customary way of doing it. So I've reduced the square root of negative 50 to 5i square root of 2. Now to reduce the fraction, I'm going to rewrite the top. Negative 20 plus 5i square root of 2. This 60 applies to all of it, to both of these terms. So put them both over 60 and reduce those two fractions. This is going back to the very beginning. 20 over 60 would reduce to 1 over 3. Remember, if the smaller number's on top, it's a fraction. Okay? If it had been 60 over 20, the answer would be 3. Now, what about here? 5 goes into 60. Is that 12 times? So negative 1/3 plus I square root of 2 all over 12. I think that'd be probably the easiest way to type that in. If you want to put the I out to the side of the fraction or after the square root of 2, that's fine, as long as you don't put the I under that square root symbol. When you're typing this answer in, make sure you're not putting the I under the square root. Oh. Any questions? Well, let's take a short break and we'll pick up in a few minutes.